You're such an asshole.
Hey everybody, the old captain here. Going to bang out a couple asshole consulting requests before the weekend begins. Just so you know, I'm taking weekends off. I got high blood pressure. Turns out. I know that's shocking to some of you. Oh my God, this guy has high blood pressure. Imagine that. So the doctor's like, you're gonna relax. I'm like, okay. So it's not that bad, but it's pre-hypertension or something. I don't know, it's my someday. I'm like, dude, I gave up drink. That pisses me off. I give up drinking and then I get high blood pressure. That's fucking... Fuck. Anyway, a young man writes, enough with my... If you got questions, asshole consulting, give me money and give you advice, blah, blah, blah. You know the racket. When money is created, doesn't whoever starts in possession of that money have a huge economic advantage over everyone who doesn't? What is the most fair way for money to enter a new or existing economy? It's the second question they had to sit down and think through, because it is a good question. We're printing off money. We do not give it out equally. We give it to banks to bail them out, and we give it to the government to bail them out, which basically goes to welfare bums and parasites and people on Social Security. So let's answer these in order. Do the people get the money first have a huge economic advantage over those who don't? And yes, absolutely, because they get the money and they get to buy at pre-inflationary prices. So they just got a dollop of purchasing power, and they get to buy at the pre-inflation prices. Now, as that money is spent, as time goes on, whoever gets that money sooner or after that, the purchasing power dwindles down because that money is being disseminated and spread into the economy, driving prices up. So it's not just the first person that gets it, but the second person that gets it, or the third person that gets it, or the fourth corporation that gets it. It also depends on what's called velocity, the rate at which money is being spent, and I believe that this is a new economic concept that I haven't seen anything about, but I believe not only is there velocity, like if people are happy and they spend a lot of money, if times are good, people spend the same dollar 5, 6, 7 times a year, okay? When times are bad, and this is kind of what's happened now, the velocity is tanked. So even though we've been printing off a lot of money, people are not re-spending this money a lot. Household debt has actually gone down because people are a little bit wary. So that's why we have money being printed off, but inflation doesn't show up in the CPI, but inflation is showing up other places, but we'll talk about that later. In addition to velocity, I believe that things are compartmentalized. That right now we do not blow all of our money on consumer goods. It does not happen to come in through inflation. Does not happen to have an effect on the core CPI stuff like energy, food, everyday consumables. But I believe it stays in certain markets like the stock market, like housing, like college, and like insurance. And when there's debt attached to it, usually debt is attached to this new money. It's not like, oh, I guess just got free money. No, usually there's debt that has to be paid back. So people are very reluctant to go ahead and spend that money. In other words, the velocity in these markets is even lower than what it would be in consumer items and stuff like that. So the money kind of stays in these markets and it never permeates to the rest of the economy. So inflation really never goes up. So that's kind of, people are asking, well, how come if we're printing off this money, liberals and leftists, the idiots, the ones who don't think far enough, or think at all, there's a, well, if we're printing off all this money, where's the inflation? Where's the inflation? And it's like, well, you're looking at the CPI. If you look at other areas, yes, there's been a ton of inflation in things we kind of need. Tuition, anybody? The stock market? Housing, anyone? Are you paying more in rent than you were a couple of years ago? Health insurance. I mean, there is inflation. We just decide not to incorporate these things into the CPI. So, and not to mention these things account for the lion's share of your budget, but we ignore that. But did bubble gum go up? Because that's the only thing that matters. Bubble gum and milk. That's the only thing that matters in inflation. So, anyway, to get back to your original question, whoever gets the money first has a huge advantage over other people. And right now, it's the banks getting bailed out. The bankers and the employees of banks that never got to get fired because the bank never had to lay people off. Unless you're Wells Fargo. Look it up. Corporations, they get access, like large borrowers, they can borrow the money at cheap rates because there's just a glut of it. So they borrow this money and then they go ahead and they repurchase their stocks. And then being very close second to that are people who are selling their stocks to these corporations. They get that money. Say, fine, here, I'll take the money. I'll cash out at a profit. And then let's not forget the parasitic welfare bum class who get, one of the largest issuers of money is the federal government. And they issue their debt and they take the money from the Federal Reserve and they give that to the welfare queens and the single moms and the bastard dads, and we spend it all on that. And isn't that wonderful? Well, they get they get free money. I mean, they didn't even work for it, so you can see that. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, any social parasite that is not working right now and gets free money. Yeah, that's a huge advantage to get free money from the government and not have to pay for anything. Just yeah, give me. I deserve it. I'm a mom. I spread my legs. Give me money because vag. So, yes, huge advantage for those closest to the money printing machine. Those closest to the printing machines get the most purchasing power. So, now, all that being said, over time, though, this money will seep into the economy. Prices will go up. And to answer the question, well, there hasn't been inflation. Yes, there has been inflation, and we're all suffering for it. Those of you who are younger going to college, you're paying. What did tuition go up? It doubled since I went to college. I mean, it goes faster than the rate of inflation by almost 500% faster than inflation, 5 times faster than inflation. Everyone's paying more in healthcare. Stocks have gone up. Everyone thinks that's a good thing. Well, do you own stocks? Because if you don't own stocks going up is a bad thing for you because now you got to pay more for them. So that's kind of bad. And then housing and rent. So inflation has gone up. It's just that the official measure that we look at, the CPI, does not account for these things. Asset prices, investments, and the like. Now, how do we fairly, if we're going to print off money, how do we fairly distribute it? And truthfully, there is no good way until a super awesome economic genius, figured it out. You would be tempted to say, okay, well, we would just increase people's savings accounts. Like we'd take everybody's savings account, and if we printed off 5% more money, we'd add 5% more. We'd deposit into everybody's savings account. People would be happy. I got my purchasing power. So even though prices may go up 5%, I got 5% more dollars. Well, that's savings. What if you are an investor, an entrepreneur, and the majority of your investments are in businesses? That won't, what about net worth? Well, should we do it with net worth? Okay, well, what is net worth? Do we take liquid assets? I mean, there's cash and then there's property. Well, this guy has $1 million worth of property. It could be inflated. Do we give him an extra $50,000 because 5%, yeah, $50,000 because they have property? Well, that's giving cash on a fixed asset that doesn't match. Same thing with, I'm trying to think of some intermediary. What happens if you have stocks? Do you add someone has a stock account? Well, stocks is not cash, but they did have to forfeit cash to get it. Do you add 5% of their value? Do you just throw another 5% worth of their stocks in the form of cash into their brokerage account? So that's an accounting nightmare and a value nightmare and a financial and economic theoretician's nightmare. That's not the way to do it. I found the best way to do it, though, is, okay, well, who issues the money? Well, that's the government. What do they use it for? Well, they use it to pay for shit. Okay, so if that's the spending point, why don't we do this? Why don't, instead of having taxes, because the government's just going to print off money to finance its deficits, why don't we just lower people's taxes? An across-the-board tax cut, okay? So if the government is going to print off 5% more money, we lower everybody's taxes by 5%. Now, there's no good solution. Well, wait a minute, that's an income tax. What about sales tax and all that? You could try to get the states to lower their income taxes and their sales taxes by a 5% amount. Not like if you have a 7% sales tax, you lower it by 5 full percentage point. Now it's at 2%. No, 5% of that 7%. In other words, we're printing off 5% more money. We get all state, local, and federal governments to lower their taxes by 5%. We print off 20% more money. We lower taxes universally across the thing by 20%. That would be the most fair because everybody in some way or another is paying these taxes, and if we lower the tax bill, that would distribute it equally amongst those who are paying the most in taxes. Now, the leftists would bitch and whine and complain because the rich would benefit more. Yeah, because they pay disproportionately more. But once again, you're asking what's fair. I'm saying, well, if they're paying the most in taxes, we lower the tax. So that would be it. The simplest way would be on the federal tax level because that's the largest. You lower that by a certain amount, and then you'd have to argue to get the state and local to do that. But that's kind of like the one thing we could do is lower federal. All right, we increased taxes by 5% at the federal, or increased the money supply by 5%. We lower it on the federal income tax levels. But all this is fancy poppycock. I mean, it's not going to happen. The Federal Reserve, I mean, you got to understand why we're printing off more money is because no one wants to buy our debts. So we have to have the Federal Reserve act like Jesus Christ nailed to the plank of wood and forgive the federal government of all of its spending sins. So the Federal Reserve is buying the federal government bonds with newly printed money. It goes to the federal government, and then the federal government gives that to people or entities that are most going to benefit the federal government. So they're going to give it to banks, they're going to give it to welfare recipients and parasites, and those are your two main groups. You could say it's also going to go out in the form of favorable contracts to connected cronies. You could go to favorable contracts to lobbyists, connected lobbyists, and special interest groups. So that's where the money is going to go no matter what. It's not until you decide to start electing hard asses like me in there. Say, yep, guess what, motherfuckers? New plan. There ain't going to be no more printing off money. We're in a balanced budget, and you're all going to tighten your belt. Those would be fun times. Those would be fun times. And then past that, after the population had decreased by half, they would look back. I'd be talking to the DT and, hey, remember when all those people thought that the money and the food would flow forever, and then they decided to riot and start trying to kill people, and everyone shot back and killed them all? Those are good times. Yeah. They wouldn't have to lift a finger. They would be worried about me. Oh, you'd send in the military. You kill. I wouldn't do anything. I'd just say, there's no more free handouts. Fend for yourselves. And then after 2 or 3 years of chaos, then there would be peace. So anyway. So yeah, that's the best way, because you want to get to the point of who is issuing the money. That's the federal government, and then okay, how do they get their money? All right, and then the one thing that they do have is the tax rate. So that'd be the simplest and most fair way to quote distribute freshly printed off money is by simply lowering people's taxes by that amount. So they wouldn't actually get the money. I mean, you could say we could issue a refund by 5. You could. But that's if you want to be a pain in the ass, that's how the IRS is. I mean, they don't want a sales tax. They want multiple different taxes, and it's a nightmare. And that's why your tax returns look like this. But, in Clary world, that's what would happen. We'd just say, yeah, you know what? We're lowering your taxes. Don't pay us that much. We just print it off our own. It's kind of like jerking off. No, you don't have to give me a blowjob. I just took care of myself and jerked off last night. So, anyway, best of luck to all of you. Toodles.